Shalom. All praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bahashemi Hoshai, Bahashemi Kakodesh. Double honors unto the apostles and elders of GMS, who are the true leaders of Israel today. And salutations to all of the Akim who do this work in truth and sincerity, who are risking their lives and their freedoms to do so, as well as the scattered Israelites who come looking like the heathen but are not, by way of their forefathers' seeds, who are Israelite men. The true name of the Most High is Yahweh, and his son's name is Yahushai. And the Lord's holy chosen people are the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, as we're the ones who suffer under the curses in the book of Deuteronomy. My name is Akalio, and this video is about this prophecy written in Revelation chapter 17 and verse 16. And it says, "And the 10 horns," which is talking about the European Union, which thou sawest upon the beast, which is talking about NATO, "these shall hate the whore, which is America, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire." So America is going to be destroyed by thermonuclear fire by way of the ICBM missiles. Okay, that will be happening at the end of the War of Armageddon, World War III. Okay, but what would be a surprise for some people, furthermore, is that America's own allies are going to turn against her, and this is what it is saying point blank, right? That the NATO and the EU, America's closest allies, are going to turn against her. So something is going to be happening between right now and, up to that point where America's relationship with her allies is going to deteriorate. And we've been witnessing this full speed this year with Trump being in office and the way that he has spoken to his allies, NATO and the EU, and they have not liked it, and the way that he has dealt with them, they have not liked it. For example, the whole situation between Russia and Ukraine, where Trump decided to have talks, I believe, with both Russia and Ukraine, but he decided to leave out NATO and the EU. And they took a very great offense to that they were intentionally left out of that type of negotiation because they're supposed to be allies, okay? Which then made the NATO and the EU, there was some talks about how they stopped sharing important intelligence report information with America. So that's just one of, the nails in the coffin regarding the deterioration of the relationship between America and her allies, the NATO and the EU, because there has been many other instances, many instances of tension that has happened between the two. You really have to observe it, but we're witnessing it in real time. And you have to remember that this is the kingdom of the Edomites, the so-called white man. Okay, this is their kingdom, and there isn't any harmony between the Edomites in their own kingdom, and there's a scripture that talks about that, which I will get. But firstly, the article, "Relations with US will never be the same, von der Leyen. Washington and Brussels have been fighting over a tariff increase since February," which that's the next thing as well. The whole tariff situation where Trump has threatened his allies, NATO and the EU, with putting tariffs on them if they don't comply and all these kinds of things. And they don't like that, and it's a very strange ordeal because y'all are supposed to be in harmony, right? But y'all are not, in the way that, as a nation, you're supposed to be harmonious with one another. The fall of the kingdom of Israel after King Solomon was because the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom were fighting, right? So the kingdom has to be harmonious. But as you can see, that there is a fracture in the relationship. And then also, let's not forget that on the other end, you also have Russia, which is an Edomite power. And they are on the other side. They are the enemies to America, NATO, and the EU. So you even have on that end. But now, even within the relationship between America, NATO, and the EU, that's fracturing. So Russia is going to destroy America with thermonuclear fire, and as well, America's allies, NATO, and the EU, they will turn against her and destroy her. Okay, so relations with the US may never return to what they used to be. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has said, citing tensions with Washington over increased tariffs on European goods. US President Donald Trump introduced 20% tariffs on European imports in February. The EU responded with its own set of penalties. Slovakia. The EU responded with its own set of trade penalties. Trump later lowered duties to 10% pending negotiations. That pause has now been extended until early August. This is another thing as well. It's like they enjoy going tit for tat, embarrassing one another on the global stage. You know what I mean? For everybody to know their business, like it's out in the streets. You know what I'm saying? But if you're allies, you contain it and you keep that indoors. You don't put it out there. You don't let the rest know about what's going on. You know what I'm saying? Because you have enemies, right? So why would you let your enemies know that there are fractures and a rift in the relationship? When your enemies see that, your enemies say, okay, well, this is good, because that makes you weaker. That puts you in a weaker position when there's in-house fighting. And this is the situation with the Edomites, okay? Specifically, the situation here with America, NATO, and the EU. Why would you do things to put your allies in a worse position? So it says, we believe that tariffs are a loss for everyone, but we are not naive either. We know that the relationship with the US may never go back to what it used to be, and so it's just deteriorating. And this is only going to keep on escalating. It's not something that's going to turn back, right? It may seem like things are amicable, right? Because there's this whole rubber band effect, or this whole, not really effect, but this whole rubber band kind of situation where tensions are rising, then it's pulled back. Tensions are rising, then it's pulled back. But according to Bible prophecy, these prophecies are going to come to pass, you know what I'm saying? So there will come the time where it's going to escalate to the point where there's no turning back, and they're saying this right here, and I do believe that even a few weeks ago, if I'm remembering correctly, another NATO member said the same thing regarding the relationship between America and them. So it says, the EU chief stated at an economical industrial forum in Rome on Thursday. The EU's priority is to stabilize the situation with the US, von der Leyen said. We are working tirelessly to find an initial understanding. The EU chief called Washington the most important trading and investment partner of Brussels. And, Brussels is actually a founding member of NATO. One of the, 12 founding members of NATO in 1940 something, so this is, one of their, oldest members, as it is a founding member. In 2024, the US was Brussels being Belgium, by the way. In 2024, the US was the largest exporter of goods to the EU and the second-ranking destination for EU imports after China, according to Eurostat. Trump's global tariff campaign has grown to include 211 countries. The American leader says his objective is to reduce the US trade deficit and stimulate domestic production. So Trump is all about America and America only. But the thing is that the moves that Trump is making is putting America in a worse position. And does he realize that? Does he know that? Perhaps so. Perhaps so, because Trump is just a puppet set up by the wicked elite of Esau Edom, which is driving all of these things. In Job chapter 9 and verse 24, it says that the earth is given into the hands of the wicked. All right. So Esau has control. So things are set up in a certain kind of way, and they use the world stage as like theater. You know what I'm saying? But regardless of that, no matter what it is that they're doing, no matter how it is that they're doing it, they still contribute to these prophecies heading towards their manifestation. All right. So Trump's global tariff, the American leader says it's objective. Okay. Since his first term, Trump has been pushing European NATO members to spend more on their own defense, while the bloc's members agreed to a 2% threshold in February. The US president suggested that NATO countries consider spending as much as 5% of GDP, warning if they don't pay, I'm not going to defend them. So that's a threat. All right, if you don't do this, then we're not going to do this. Okay, even though we know that if you do this, it puts you in a worse position than you already are in. And then you're doing this to your allies. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has said Trump was right to demand that European members step up military spending. So that's even another part of the situation, right? Differing opinions within NATO, which means that they're not in harmony, right? One is saying this, one is saying that, one is hitting out against this, the other is agreeing with this. Okay? They're not in unison. The bloc consequently agreed to a 5% minimum in June. NATO leaders insisted that the hike in expenditure was aimed at deterring Russia amid the Ukraine conflict. Some officials suggested that Moscow could launch a full-scale attack on the US-led bloc within a few years. Well, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, however, called the NATO spending increase unreasonable and counterproductive. So there it is, Spain. So Spain is against it as well, with Belgium, which Trump responded to by saying the word "make them pay twice" through trade measures. So you see, so when he already is threatening them, he threatens them more. You see, it's just a very tumultuous, terrible relationship, and so. Let's get to the scripture. In the book of Mark, I think it's Mark, chapter 3, and verse 24. And if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. And Esau's kingdom is clearly divided against itself. Okay? And just out the gate, you have one side, America, NATO, and the EU, plus the state of Israel, which has been deemed an unofficial member of NATO, against Russia, right? Another Edomite sovereign power in this world. Then you have the fracturing of the relationship between America and her current allies, NATO and the EU. So America's true only ally is going to be the state of Israel, which America is going to have to go to defend the state of Israel. So, the scriptures let us know what's going to happen. They're going to lose. And if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. Esau's kingdom is divided. Esau's house is divided. And if Satan rise up against himself, Satan referring to Esau, the so-called white man, the adversary to Yahweh, Shemisha, and the Israelites, and be divided, he cannot stand but hath an end. So this fractured Edomite kingdom is, as the scripture says, Yahushua said it, he cannot stand but hath an end. And so we know that his end is going to be the destruction of America by way of the ICBM missiles from Russia and her allies, and then and then NATO and the EU as well shooting missiles at America. All right, and then after that, the entire nation of Edom plus the heathen are going into slavery. Okay, so your end is coming, and it's showing itself very clearly based on what's going on through current events in this world. So that's all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Shem Yeshai, Bashim Kodesh. Shalom.